Hello, my loves. And for those of you that are new this week, thank you for joining. I love to see this group grow, and I see more people join every week, and it just fills my heart. So, my name is Casandramacalan, and the name of my business is Therapy. And I provide compassionate support to people who are seeking to empower themselves so that they can heal from trauma and pain and transform their lives into true freedom and vibrant health. Today's live is about trauma, pain, and anxiety, and these topics are very near and dear to my heart and soul. After 18 years in practice under the name Hands for Light, I developed a chronic autoimmune condition. And after trying everything Western medicine had to offer me, without any success, I ended up figuring out how to heal myself instead. And through this process that I developed, I renamed my business in order to reflect my new focus, which is helping women realize how their discordant thoughts, emotions, and energy from unhealed trauma reflect themselves in their bodies as pain, anxiety, depression, being overweight, making unhealthy choices, amongst other things. So, to dive right in, some of you might have heard of the ACE scale, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And this is a scale of how much trauma that you received as a child. And I will admit that on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 10. And this information is helpful to know because for those of us that have undergone trauma of this severity, amongst other issues that arise because of that trauma as we age, we often manifest chronic diseases. Through the process of healing myself from my autoimmune and my chronic health anxiety and depression, I was able to develop programs to help other women heal. And while the first level is about working with women individually with their specific needs, there are some basic tools that I found that are very helpful for anyone who has undergone trauma of any nature. And even those who don't think that they have, but are simply unable to change maybe patterns of their thoughts and or their lives to better reflect what would really bring them joy. So, for today's talk, I thought I would start with some basic information and share 5 things we have to do to start to heal from trauma. And while I'm sharing this, if anyone has any questions, please just put them down in the chat and I will answer them when I'm done. So to begin, I want to share the awareness that the mind, emotions, physical body, and energy systems are all inexorably linked. Now, this means that if we've experienced a traumatic event as a child, and like most of us, didn't have a safe space to release our thoughts or the emotions or the energy of them, and we didn't receive consistency or comfort with them, then it's inevitable that the energy would be stored in our bodies. Just like you could imagine the thoughts would be stored in our minds and the emotions in our hearts and belief systems. In fact, there are thoughts, emotions, and energetics that store themselves in certain areas of the body. There are also ones that lead to certain types of pain, illnesses, and diseases. For instance, as in my case, when your body has an autoimmune response, it basically means that it is attacking itself instead of a foreign invader. And this is closely linked to lack of self-love and self-worth. We feel like our bodies betray us, just like we might have felt that our families did. We feel unworthy, not good enough, unlovable, and often suffer from perfectionist tendencies as we are desperately trying to prove to ourselves and the world that we're better than we fear we are, and we're worthy of love and respect that we feel we didn't get. And obviously, you might have guessed that there are some clear links as to the feelings that I held that manifested that disease and my desire to go into healing and study it, both for myself and then ultimately for all of you. So if you're interested in what specific thoughts and emotions can lead to what specific pain or illness in the body, my lovely VA, Lori V, put a carousel of images in the feed on this page, I think a week or two ago. And so you can find that, and it will share specifics about some of these links between our thoughts and our pain, hence thought pain therapy. But for today, I want to share the top 5 things you need to do in order to help you uncover your own specific connections and help you find the healing that you and all of us deserve. So the first 3 steps you might have noticed that I shared in a post from earlier this week. And so you might have seen that, but I'm going to go over them and expand on them and then add 2 more. So the first step is awareness. So what do I mean by that? Well, we can't change or heal anything until we are able to find the awareness of what it is that is replicating itself in our systems and creating beliefs that then lead to mental, emotional, and physical pain and suffering. So for awareness, it really is about learning how to sit in the thought or feeling that you're having that is not feeling good, instead of distracting yourself from it or avoiding it or denying it or trying to separate yourself and live in your head. Any of these things that we kind of have learned how to do to get through life when we're thinking and feeling things that hurt. So it is a process of learning how to sit in your feelings until you receive information about where they're coming from. So that's step 1. Step 2, which is the next thing we have to do, is we have to acknowledge it. So acknowledgement means that giving leave for this feeling or thought to exist and not worrying about whether it's right or we should be having it. You know, a lot of times we are upset about something. Maybe we're angry and we don't even know why. We just feel it. We're reactionary to it. And a lot of times what we do is we stuff it down and we tell ourselves, I can't be mad about this right now, which is not acknowledgement. I mean, it is in the sense that we're aware of it, but by stuffing it down, it doesn't do anything but continue to fester inside our systems and grow. And I've kind of talked about that in the past. So again, this is not about whether you should or should not be sad, mad, scared, etc., but just acknowledging that you are. Simple as that. The next step is allowance. And that is to let it be, to allow this feeling, this emotion, this thought, this space to be within you, to allow that this is happening. And again, to not try to hide from it or make it wrong or ignore it or push past it or just, keep on doing what you're doing. So these first three steps, they may seem simple, but as you may have experienced, they are not easy. So again, it is to have the awareness, to acknowledge that this is a feeling that you're having, to allow it to be without trying to fix it or fade it. So the fourth step, which I haven't shared with you, is about acceptance. Now, initially, acceptance may seem very similar to allowance, but it's not. Sometimes we can allow that something is happening, but we still struggle with acceptance. We don't want to accept that this is something that has occurred. We don't want it to have occurred, and we think that by refusing to accept it, that somehow we're going to mitigate the trauma of it happening. But we don't. What we do is we begin to segment and separate parts of our feelings from our bodies, which doesn't stop the damage that has occurred from continuing to exist. So to accept something is that next step after the allowance that it happened. It's the step that said, okay, I accept that it did. And in my case, I accept that I experienced mental, emotional, physical, and sexual trauma. I accept it. And then the fifth step is action. And that's where we need to really understand the best steps that we can take to begin to put together a formula of healing for ourselves. What tools can we use? What thought behavior dynamics can we visit? What can we uncover and what can we master? And what can we shift in our systems that will help us create the lives we want? And when it comes to the trauma and the energy of that trauma, that often shows up as anxiety and depression, because again, the trauma happened, the emotion happened, but if we didn't integrate the energy, then it'll keep showing up. And a lot of times it shows up as uncertain anxiety or depression, and we don't know why until we've done these 5 steps. And then we learn how to take action. So I hope that this is helpful. And to close, I created a free gift that I'm going to share with anyone who's watching me today. It has something I call the 3 keys to overcoming illness, boosting energy, and living the vibrant life that you deserve. And I'm going to put a link in the comments. And anyone who clicks on the link, and it'll be active for probably a week, you can download this free gift. So I hope that helps. And I hope you have enjoyed today's talk. And I will go to the comments and see if there's any questions for me today. Okay, first question. It seems like trauma creates in us conditioned responses or reactions, especially when another person has been a catalyst for reminding us of that trauma. How can we learn how to respond not from a place of trauma, but from a loving and self-loving space? Wow, I mean, that really is the best question in the world. And you're exactly right. It does create these reactions to things that we may not even link to what is happening currently with what has happened in the past. Let's say, just as an example, let's say someone in your childhood who was a position of authority to you, let's say for the purpose of this discussion, it's a masculine influence, like a father or a male caregiver, in some way minimized your needs or disabused you of the notion that they had value or treated you poorly or unkindly or out and out harmed you. Even if you've gone through your life being aware of this, If, for instance, you, as you become an adult, form a relationship with another man who has maybe an energetic or a tone or a behavior about him that triggers a reminder to you of what you experienced as a child, you could unknowingly react out of a space of defensiveness because there's a part of you that is still trying desperately either A, not to sense that trauma that is living there, or B, not to pay attention to it and give it that acknowledgement and awareness that it craves, or C, you haven't integrated it, which is also really, really important. You know, the healing community talks a lot about letting it go and releasing, but doesn't talk about integrating. And that's really important. And a lot of times people will try to release things that they really haven't even formed the awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance of. And again, if even if you're able to release, I guess, in some way the thought, which I don't know how you would do without finding a way to forgive that person and yourself, the energy still is there and that has to be integrated. And until that energy is integrated, then we won't be able to unlink these things. They might continue to trigger us again and again. In fact, you may find yourself that every masculine influence in your life who's in a position of authority automatically sets you on edge. As I know I do when I am faced with, and I have worked this throughout my life and continue to work it, men who show aggression. Because I received so much violence and aggression as a child from my father, when I'm faced with a man who becomes aggressive, I become aggressive in turn, which was not the response I had as a child. The response I had as a child to my 6 foot plus ginormous father was to shrink and become small and try to hide and beg for sympathy and just try to not be hurt. But as an adult, that fear response then triggered to an anger response. And I would find myself becoming hyper aggressive with men who were maybe in their own space of anger that had nothing to do with me. So, lastly, how do we learn to respond not from that place of trauma, which is reactionary, but from a loving and self-loving space? We work our stuff. And it is, in some ways, I've tried to make it a simple process, but it is one that takes dedication and commitment from those of us who are really seeking to change our lives. And as an example, these first 5 steps are kind of how we begin to know what we have to do to learn how to integrate this pain and instead have it fuel our passion and our purpose without having it keep us from who we're meant to be. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, the next question: what are some simple steps to be able to become aware of past traumas that are affecting us that we may have blocked out? It's a very good question. So, talking about awareness, some really simple steps are mindfulness practices and meditative practices. My personal suggestion for meditative practices is that you try to not use something that is guided, in other words, something that's talking to you, but rather just sitting in silence and letting yourself feel terribly uncomfortable, because it will, especially if you're not familiar with it. The first thing your brain's going to do is convince you that the world is passing you by in these 10 and 15 minutes. And I laugh because it happens to me still, only for a minute or two, but it still happens. Our brains kick in and try to tell us all the things we really should be doing instead of sitting with our thoughts, because our mind is terrified of stepping out of time, of our past and our future, and instead being really, really present. So meditation, 10 minutes a day. I think one of the quickest and easiest ways you can do it is try snoozing it. When your alarm goes off in the morning, and you hit your snooze button for 10 or 15 minutes, use that time to just listen to the thoughts as they begin to occur from the kind of unplugged mind that you've brought into your awareness. And if that time doesn't work for you because you're flying off to do all the things, then 10 minutes at night before bed. And if meditation is simply something that you still haven't been able to wrap yourself around, which I highly recommend you try, then mindfulness practices. And one of the ways, the most helpful and profound ways that you can do this is when you are thinking a thought that doesn't make you feel good. That's it. Just thinking a thought that you feel shitty for thinking. Quiet everything else down and sit for a moment in the thought. And see if you can get an understanding in that moment of what it links to. You don't have to set a timer for a meditation. Just be quiet. Maybe grab a journal or your phone and write down whatever comes to you without judging it or editing it. Just say, this is what happened to me. This is what I was thinking. Why am I thinking this? What does it remind me of? And maybe how would I like to think? And go from there. And that is a way to begin to pick apart some ways in which our mind's way of protecting us keeps us from really being able to heal us. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you. Thank you. Would you be willing to do a Mind Body Monday on integration sometime? Yes, absolutely. That is a great suggestion. And I will write that down. And I will give you some of the tools that I've mentioned in the comments and also some others, because integration is hugely important. And, you know, it's one of those things that I actually didn't realize was hugely important until I became incredibly ill. And using all the tools that I had formed over the prior 18 years dealing with people in pain still was not enough. And through a series of really intense deep dives into my subconscious that included having to be bedridden, so I had nothing else to do, and some really painful experiences that I would hope to save other people from having, I was able to realize that integration was hugely key. And now it's something that I help my clients do. So yeah, it's a great idea. Just signing on. We'll have to rewatch from the beginning. Oh, I hope you do. Love the idea of using the snooze button for meditating in bed. I do too, because if you're like me, once the alarm goes off, your brain already goes, okay, I gotta get ready. And we just kind of use that 10 minutes just to lay there. So why not lay there and just open yourself up to whatever thoughts come into your consciousness? Or if you're a follower of Abraham Hicks, as you all know that I am, you can use that time for manifestation if the meditation becomes too difficult. But mindfulness, meditation, and manifestation really are the top 3 steps to helping us integrate. So I hope this was helpful for you today. I'm going to, right now, before I forget, I'm going to put a link in the chat where you guys can get my free gift. And again, I just created this, and I will leave it in here for about a week, just for those of you who are watching. So, and if anybody wants to chat with me personally, I'll put a link in there for that. And as always, I love you all, and I hope you take care of yourself for me, okay? I'll talk to you next week.